Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 402. Book of Revelation. Part 4. Every constellation in the star stream has detected the existence of the calamity. Many constellations have fallen into a state of fear. As the surrounding atmosphere transformed rapidly, constellations enjoying the ceasefire all began repeatedly roaring out as well as speaking in their true voices. Some were panicking grandly, wondering what was going on here. Some sensed the status of the calamity and became scared. Some constellations began lodging inquiries to the Bureau, hoping to escape from this scenario. The bitter struggles of the stars trying to survive turned the battlefield into pure pandemonium in no time at all. The Bureau of the Star Stream is responding to the emergency situation. Finally, the Bureau was stepping forward. Seeing that the messages regarding constellations had decreased by a whole lot quite rapidly just then, it seemed that the Bureau also found the current situation rather concerning as well. The Bureau of the Star Stream has begun an internal meeting on the applicable issue. It was quite likely that even the Bureau didn't expect this great war of saints and demons to become this big. Well, from the get-go, the chaos points were simply added in as the extra spice for the sake of speedy progress of the great war of saints and demons. But then, that extra points system had surpassed the good/evil points, and it was even trying to awaken the apocalypse dragon now. If that dragon did wake up, then countless constellations would end up getting killed. In other words, it'd be the same thing as the number of the Bureau's customers, declining rather precipitously. Even if the Bureau steps forward, they won't be able to revert the calamity, as if it never happened in the first place. I agreed with Surya's assertion. We were in the 80th main scenario. Even if this was the Bureau, they wouldn't be able to cancel the great fable. So, now wasn't the time to place our faith in their potential response. In order for the apocalypse dragon to wake up, the chaos points need to rise up by another 10. Although it wasn't a lot, we still had some time. If we failed to prevent the release of the apocalypse dragon, then there was a very good chance that my companions would be killed here. What should I do to prevent that from happening? Of course, I could immediately come up with a method to do that, eliminate the source behind the rise in the chaos points. The problem was that the source was hidden inside that sphere. Suchachachuchit. Even if it's a seeker of the end, it shouldn't be able to hold on for long inside there. Through the ways of survival, I knew who was on the list of the seekers of the end. No one on that list was capable of lasting for a long time while inside that sphere. Not only were Metatron and Agars were in there, but the highest grade constellations in this world were with them, too. Even if they were to take their time, archangels and demon kings should have discovered the seeker of the end and killed it by now. With that, chaos points should stop rising up. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 91. It was around at that time that sparks exploded in the air. The sphere violently shook around before a portion of its side faintly spread open, and something began falling from there. There were 6 torn wings visible on her back. It was an archangel I knew well. I activated Way of the Wind and flew up in haste. The body of the archangel I caught was quite light. A certain fragrance wafted into my nose. Fables were falling like flower petals from the deep wound running across her back. Gabriel. Constellation, lily blooming on Aquarius, is looking at you. She was the Archangel Gabriel, who had experienced the 1863rd turn with me before coming back home, the constellation who fell into a deep pit of shock after learning that she'd betray Eden in the future. I momentarily wondered if she was the reason for the unfolding crisis, but I knew that couldn't be the case. Even in the original story, there was a very good reason to her betrayal, and technically speaking, you couldn't even really call what she did a betrayal, either. Gabriel's lips moved with great difficulty. It was hard to hear her voice. I pressed her for an answer. What happened in there? Please talk to me. She looked up at my face with fatigued eyes, but then handed something over to me. It was her fable. Her trembling lips moved. Her voice couldn't be heard, but I could definitely understand the words being conveyed. Please, save Eden. Gabriel's fable began telling its story. Metatron looked at the angels lining up by his sides, as well as the demon king standing on his opposite side one at a time. They all seemed to be anxious. Also, their expressions displayed their failure at understanding how they arrived at their current situation. In the middle of all those faces, the oldest rival to Metatron could be seen. To think that we'd be in this place because of a single nebula. How absurd. It was the master of the second demon world, the ruler of the East Hell. While lighting up a thick cigarette, Agars asked his question. How will we decide on the victors and losers? Will we enter the third great war of saints and demons right away? Honestly speaking, I'm against it. Gathering this much probability again would be next to impossible, after all. To start this great war of saints and demons, both Eden and the demon world had to swallow huge losses. Even among all the great fables of the star stream, the great war of saints and demons boasted an unparalleled scale. If this scenario ended in annulment, then the fable of good and evil they barely managed to scrounge up would scatter again, and both the good and the evil could end up on the road to extinction. Metatron looked up at the outside sky, faintly visible through the gray sphere. Flashes of lightning could be seen within the dark, gloomy clouds ominously gathering above him. Was it because of the end of the world type vibe? He abruptly recalled an event that had taken place a long time ago. Agars. It's already been several thousands of years since the master of the first demon world had passed on. I don't have the time to leisurely reminisce about the past with you. Do you still remember that day? It was the day I inherited this abominable wall, so how could I have forgotten it? Wall that divides good and evil is growling. Ominous sparks danced around Agars's incarnation body. When that happened, a similar phenomenon happened around Metatron's incarnation body, as well. Wall that divides good and evil is falling into a reminiscence of the past. A wall that was one, but at the same time, two. A fragment of the final wall that decided the good and the evil of the world. With that wall in the middle, the representatives of Eden and the demon world were staring at each other. For a long time, you and I decided on the good and evil of this world, didn't we? Just what was good? Even Metatron, the leader of Eden, didn't have the answer to that question. Because good was simply a collection of countless fables, that was why. He read the fables of his predecessors, figured them out, and learned about good that way. And those good, rather than explaining themselves, simply pointed to other fables and spoke like this, instead. That is not good. And that was how evil was created. Zhong Yui, justice, had morphed into Zhong Yui, to define, and along with that, anger had been invented. And therefore, we are not evil. That was how good was created. That simply dichotomy had managed to tear the star stream in half. The simpler and more unyielding the principle, the stronger its ability to spread out. Countless constellations jumped on the bandwagon of the principle of good and evil. You probably have no idea. No idea about how boring it can get, trying to exist as evil in this world. Agars breathed out the cigarette smoke and continued on. It was you who forced the good and evil into this state. You erased the particulars of evil, and you also spread that damned promotion of virtue and disapproval of vice like some kind of a plague. Indeed, you bastard, are the original culprit who managed to break the fable of good and evil. It didn't really matter what kind of minute details, or whether sadness and pain existed within the scenario. What did matter, however, was the conclusion. The good judged and punished the evil. That was enough for the others to shed grateful tears and clap their hands. Without a doubt, such a time did exist. Metatron spoke up. But, you also agreed to do that, didn't you? Back then, that was the only way for us to survive. The good stayed alive by punishing the evil, while the evil continued to exist by resisting against the good. And so, tens of thousands of years passed by like that. The division between good and evil became blurry, and justice/definition had disappeared. The good and evil ended up becoming a concept of bored old men. No one welcomed the idea of promoting virtue and disapproving vice anymore. Drop. Agar's dropped the cigarette he'd been smoking on the floor, and as if he was stepping on an insect, squashed it to kill it. Through the repetition of the scenarios, the good has become a source of stuffy boredom, while the evil has become an antiquated cliché. I have to wonder, maybe it's about time that we stop with this foolishness. Agar's words prompted the Demon Kings to pull out all of their weapons. Metatron spoke again. If we fight here, then everyone will perish together. Evil has always been easier than good. Even if you all disappear, we will still remain. The world forgetting about good does not mean I have forgotten mine. Then, prove it. Agar's eyes began burning up. We will no longer be the plaything of the promotion of virtue and disapproval of vice anymore. I am evil. I was born evil, and proving that you exist used to be the reason for my existence. And from today onwards, I shall break free from that reason. The Demon Kings all roared out in unison. Their statuses overflowed as if to sweep away every archangel present at any given moment. But, right at that moment, members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 83. System messages rose up in the air. The sudden spike in the chaos points caused the shocked archangels to exchange glances with each other. What's going on? It's the outside. Someone is slaughtering the members from the same side. Agar's and the Demon Kings also became flustered. And in the middle of all this confusion, only Metatron maintained his composed chuckle. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but it seems that this is the only way forward. What are you? If you want a fight, then I'll give you one. However, what meaning is there for us to fight inside this place and end the great war of saints and demons? Who do you think will remember the good and evil that fought inside this tiny little sphere and met its ignoble doom? There was a hint of bizarre, creepy madness in Metatron's voice. Sensing that something very ominous was about to occur, Agar's loudly shouted out. Metatron! Just what the hell are you thinking? My thoughts are as thus. As soon as Metatron finished talking, Michael, standing right at the forefront of the archangels, unsheathed his sword. Now that the strongest archangel had pulled its sword out, Demon Kings didn't hold back and unleashed their statuses while roaring out, as well. And in the following moment, Michael's sword pierced into someone else. Me, Chael. Eyes trembled softly in sheer disbelief. The person Michael had stabbed wasn't a Demon King. He began laughing. How regretful. I always wanted to kill Uriel first, though. Archangel Raguel continued to shake its head in disbelief, but eventually, it died on the spot as the fables poured out from its wounds. Demonic aura began boiling all over Michael's entire frame after he murdered one of his kin. A corrupted angel's powers would grow stronger by killing fellow archangels. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 87. Status that almost reached that of a myth-grade constellation exploded forth, and the massacre commenced in earnest. Angels that had no place to run hurriedly unleashed their statuses, but they couldn't even put up a proper fight before getting killed. Originally, there was a restriction placed on Michael that prevented him from attacking a fellow angel on the side of absolute good. Even then, if such a thing was possible, that could only mean. Scribe, just why? Metatron's book was emitting bright white light. This slaughter was taking place under the tacit approval of Scribe of Heaven. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 88. The sight of hell itself unfolded as an angel murdered another angel. Demon Kings watched the proceedings like onlookers spectating on the wildfire on the other side of the river, shook from sheer terror, and hastily stepped back. Michael grinned brightly, and while wiping the angel blood off his cheek, spoke. And now, good will forever be remembered. The most ancient good has begun its storytelling. The battle of saints and demons were, in the end, a battle between fables. And these fables knew better than anyone on what to do so that they would be remembered forever. Agar's, enraged beyond means, roared out. Could it be that, you bastards, wish to revive the apocalypse dragon? Just as it urgently tried to unleash its status, something dug deeply into its back, a covert, sneaky demonic energy that could even rival its own status. The most ancient evil has begun its storytelling. Agar's unstably wobbled about and looked behind itself. You bastard, why? You said it yourself, haven't you? The Demon King felt the sensation of the sharp claws cutting out its heart. Asmodeus, the seeker of the end, was smiling brightly. That evil is always easier than good. Gabriel's fable was really short. Short, but more than long enough to explain everything. Hell had unfolded inside that sphere already. Run away, Gabriel. Request aid from those people. And a small number of archangels, including Raphael, sacrificed their statuses at the last moment to send Gabriel outside the sphere. Definition of good and evil are rapidly changing. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 92. Kim Dokja. Yu Younghyuk and Han Suyang had arrived by my side already. Their eyes were demanding an explanation. Rather than providing a detailed but time-wasting one, I simply spoke of the core of the issue at hand. It's Metatron. He was planning to wake up the Apocalypse Dragon from the very beginning. As if she knew what had transpired already, a big scowl formed on Han Suyang's face. That fool, I thought he knew what happened in the 1863rd turn. During 1863rd regression turn, Eden was destroyed by the Apocalypse Dragon. And Metatron was well aware of that. He must be believing that this is the only way to avoid their destruction. It was Yu Younghyuk who said that. He continued on. If the Apocalypse Dragon wakes up, then at the bare minimum, this great war of saints and demons should become a fable no one will ever forget even until the final days of the Starstream. What the hell? What's the point of that if everyone is about to die? Not everyone will die. Some that manage to survive will end up remembering the good and evil forever. Even if both Eden and the demon world perished, the story would be different as long as the good and evil didn't vanish. Even if everything were to come to an end, the ideology would still be inherited, that's why. Countless constellations and incarnations would die, and without a doubt, the Apocalypse Dragon would be designated as evil. Then, the rest of the world would gather together to fight against that calamity. And Eden and the demon world would forever be etched in everyone's memory. Han Suyang shuddered uncomfortably at that out there show of will. Those crazy sons of bitches. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 93. I watched the chaos points slowly climb up and felt the helplessness creep in bit by bit. All of this was Metatron's scenario. Kim Dokja, what are we going to do? From afar, the rest of our companions, plus Uriel, were flying towards our location. I need to think. We had worked too hard to get this far. Su-cha-cha-chat. It was at that moment that a portal opened up in the air as sparks wildly danced about. Dakibis? Great Dakibi, Hyoju, empty throne, has appeared in the scenario. Great Dakibi, Heech, empty body, has appeared in the scenario. Two great Dakibis, one wearing a formal black suit while the other, a white one, descended from the sky while scattering around dignified statuses. They must have come here on short notice because their crumpled, untidy shirts and ties were flapping around in the strong winds. They approached me immediately and spoke as thus. Demon King of Salvation, this dark stratum will soon perish. And, it's almost a guarantee that you will die here. I figured that the Bureau would start making their move by now. I didn't expect great Dakibis to personally show up here, though. If you came here to prophetize the apocalypse, then I'm afraid you're a bit too late now. The system's been yapping on about it for a while, you see. The two great Dakibis looked at each other as if they were taken aback by my composed reply. Just as the rumors suggested, he does possess a glib tongue. And that's why the king is so interested in him, most likely. Just before I could ask for a clarification on that, one of the great Dakibis broke out into a smirk. As if it was about to make an offer that I couldn't possibly refuse. Oh, Demon King. Let us get straight to the point. give up on this great war of saints and demons. This great Dakibi laughed as if entertained by something, and while looking at Gabriel lying down on the ground, spoke again. If you do, we shall take you to the final scenario. Chapter 403. Book of Revelation. Part 5. The final scenario. Acting as if they already knew what I wanted, the two Dakibis wearing the contrasting black and white formal suits pressed me for an answer. You must decide now. Die in this place, or head off to the final scenario with us. The great Dakibis, Hyoju and Heech. I knew a few things about these two great Dakibi siblings. Well, they did appear frequently in the latter half of the Ways of Survival, after all. Besides that, though, to think they would mention final scenario with their own lips. It seemed that the Dakibis were finally getting ready for the end of this world as well. Just as constellations and incarnations repeatedly fought to ensure their continued survival, the storytellers also had a story that they needed to convey at any cost. And the great Dakibis were getting ready for that final story. Final scenario? What are these two talking about? Han Suyang didn't seem to know. Herself from the 1863rd regression turn must have not told her of it, it seems. I recalled that version of Han Suyang, wearing the exact same white coat as me. That meticulous person wouldn't have forgotten about it, so it was more likely that her choice was deliberate. It's too long to explain right now. I couldn't really tell. However, she might have believed that not knowing would be more advantageous for herself in the third turn. I felt just a bit strange after recalling Han Suyang from the 1863rd turn after such a long while. That turn, when I went to visit it, was already facing its final battle. Did Han Suyang survive that battle? If she did, what kind of person would she have become now? I shifted my head to find Yu Yoonhyuk staring at me. Are you going to accept their offer? You're actually asking me that? As if he knew it, he turned his head away. He looked as if he was rueful about something. If I had accepted the offer, then he might have lobbed my head off right this instant, or something. Meanwhile, great Dakibis were still waiting for me. Your decision? Well, I'm sure you've already guessed it. No thanks. And your reason is? Because it's suspicious. Suspicious? From the get-go, the offer itself is strange. Give up on the great war of saints and demons, and you'll take me to the final scenario. Can't you really see what's missing from that? You're a storyteller, yet your degree of understanding towards my fable is strikingly low. Great Dakibi Heech looked at me in dumbfoundedness, before eyeing Great Dakibi Hyoju. The latter nodded his head and spoke. If you accept the offer, then we shall lend our aid to ensure the survival of every Kim Dokja company member present in this place. Both Yu Yoonhyuk and Han Suyang looked at me simultaneously at that unexpected declaration. A path that would save everyone from Kim Dokja company present here, plus taking us right to the final scenario? Even if it's the Bureau, wouldn't doing something like that as you please tilt the balance of probability? That is something for us to worry about. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime chance, an opportunity to save everyone and reach the final scenario. An offer so tempting that one wouldn't even dare to think about rejecting it. Even then, my head was colder than it was ever before. It sounds like you're in a really tight situation right now. Surely, me giving up on the great war of saints and demons can't be everything there is to your offer. I'll have to sign the stream contract with you guys in exchange. Am I correct? The stream contract. A type of contract that I had with Baihyung once upon a time. The two great Dakibis formed surprised expressions. I decided to land another blow. In order to become the final storyteller, you are trying to take my fable and use it, aren't you? How do you know things like this? I'm not interested in your offer. Then, your group will die here. We don't know that. Didn't you say it earlier? It's almost a guarantee. In that case, there's a very low chance of us not dying. Have you not seen the calamity from the other world line? This time, it was my turn to be surprised. It seemed that great Dakibis were now more or less aware of the events of the 1863rd regression turn. The apocalypse dragon isn't some simple calamity that a single constellation or nebula can stop. I knew that. I knew how horrifying the status of that dragon was. Well, I did directly sense it back in the future world line, didn't I? Even then, I still smiled. I thought creating an entertaining scenario was the duty of the Dakibi. You should just get ready to start the broadcast, instead. As if she was reacting to my words, Bu popped up in the air with a well-timed tada. Bot. Many constellations are astonished by your choice. A small number of constellations believe that you're insane. Constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is cackling away. Sponsorship Community's Big Whale has sponsored 300,000 coins for your ambitious spirit. As expected, thanks to the enormity of the situation, the incoming sponsorship amount proved to be rather sizable, too. The great Dakibi glared at me with unreadable eyes for a little bit, before slowly vanishing from the view. You shall regret this decision. Their figures scattered like smoke. And with that, the certain method to save every one of my companions had vanished alongside them, as well. Your decisiveness always surprises me. Even Surya seemed to be impressed by my decision this time. I looked at the unconscious Gabriel within my arms. Han Suyong, looking at her, asked me a question. Kim Dokja. What now? What? What do you want? You thought about this long and hard before answering, right? It's not because of some cheap sympathy or a momentary rush of blood or something, right? I nodded my head. In that case, fine. A faint trace of resentment could be felt from her tone of voice. I spoke. It's okay for you to get angry. I did reject an incredible opportunity just now, after all. However, by not doing that. Yeah, well, sure. You have your reasons. Honestly, I knew you'd say no, anyway. What? Why? Han Suyong's sigh-filled replies were followed up by Yu Younghyuk. Because that's how you operate, you fool. Looking at him glaring back at me with his usual eyes, I instantly realized what these two had to give up for my sake. Right. This was how I lived my life. And it was not how Han Suyong or Yu Younghyuk lived theirs. Sure, this type of method does suit the stupid fable of Kim Dokja Company the best. I'm definitely recording today's events in my memoir later. Obviously, after surviving this place, that is. You better worry about what to do next, instead. Han Suyong and Yu Younghyuk, two very different people. I realized something just then. I managed to get this far because these two lived on their own terms, respected my decisions in their own ways. I began thinking, with these two around, maybe not all hope was lost, after all. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 96. Sparks were still flying around in the sky. The battle taking place inside that gray sphere should be winding down by now. The good and evil, planning to survive by driving this world to destruction, would soon reveal themselves from there. Han Suyong asked. Are we going to stop that? Yu Younghyuk shook his head. It's impossible to breach that sphere from the outside. What then? We can't stop the chaos points from reaching the 100 mark. The apocalypse dragon will revive. And with that, the first tail flick will begin. The first tail flick. It seemed that Yu Younghyuk knew about that calamity. I recalled the prophecy of the apocalypse dragon appearing within the ways of survival. From the center of the hottest hell, a dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns will awaken. It will be a dragon among dragons. A leader of all dragons born within the center of chaos, and the world's oldest hatred. The dragon will look at the heavens and the earth once, before flicking its tail. That single tail flick will cause stars to fall, and one direction of the world to vanish. Back in the 1863rd turn, I didn't get to witness that tail flick. Back then, the apocalypse dragon wasn't in the fully revived state. However, things would be different this time around. Yu Hyuk spoke in a resolute tone of voice. We have no other choice but to fight it head-on. Fuck. I knew you'd say something like that. Han Soo-young sounded resigned in her reply. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 98. Only 2 more points remained in the chaos points. I saw my companions rush over here from the distance. Ajusi. Dokja Hyung. I saw Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-yong, and Lee Ji-hai leading the battleship as well as Jang Hui-won. Uriel was accompanying them, her expression complicated. She saw Gabriel in my arms and was taken greatly by surprise. Gabriel. I handed the wounded archangel over to her. I quickly looked at my companions first as there wasn't a lot of time for a detailed explanation. Ajusi, is the apocalypse dragon really going to wake up? I nodded my head. As if to instill discipline, Han Soo-young began shouting out. You all better be ready for this. This isn't going to be a picnic. When was it ever? Along with Lee Ji-hai's reply, the companions quickly finished with the preparations. Everyone. Han Soo-young, Yu Hyuk, Shin Yu-sung, Lee Gil-yong, Jang Hui-won, and Lee Ji-hai all carried a hardened, determined expression. Finally, I shifted my gaze over to the face of the still unconscious Lee Hyun-sung. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 99. And then, the apocalypse dragon's imminent revival drew near. Many constellations are in a state of terror. Constellations of Starstream have fallen into a chaotic state. Nebula, Olympus, is getting ready for the calamity. Nebula, Vedas, is getting ready for the calamity. Nebula, Hongik, is Kugugugugu. Something from deep within the island writhed, causing the heaven and earth to shake violently. It felt as if everything was now enveloped within a gigantic flap of a wing. The surrounding view felt like it was precariously hanging on as if it was an ill-fitting block. Smaller fables had already started breaking down, bit by bit. As if it wanted to deprive the names of all calamities that had existed so far, an enormous fable began waking up. Kim Dokja. The ones at most peril when the apocalypse dragon awakens are the constellations. According to the prophecy, that's right. And you're a constellation. The first tail flick would destroy a direction in the sky. Simply put, all the stars and the contexts for the modifiers found within the applicable location would be destroyed. Han Soo-young began smirking. Hey, Kim Dokja, which direction were you, again? East? Or was it the west? If you are unlucky, I guess you'll be the first one to die? That could be true. So, I might as well pray for my survival before I die. What bullshit are you spewing now? Wait, are you and the apocalypse dragon acquaintances? Although her tone of voice wasn't exactly nice, Han Soo-young's eyes were sparkling brightly, nonetheless. I decided to satisfy her expectations somewhat. You see, the apocalypse dragon isn't actually referring to a specific dragon. Just like how the most ancient good or the most ancient evil doesn't refer to any specific constellations, the final dragon of the Book of Revelation simply refers to the great fable itself. Hang on. Doesn't that mean? At this point in time, it's not been decided on who shall become the apocalypse dragon. Han Soo-young's jaw fell ever so slightly. Current chaos points, 100. Chaos points have reached the limit. Along with the chilling sensation traveling down my back, the whole world began to die in the jet black color. The threatening aura breaking out from beneath the surface began encroaching into the entire island. From the hottest hell, the demonic dragon palace is opening its doors. Blinding rays of light exploded out and the surrounding space shattered away. Giant shadows began appearing from there. After excluding the outer god-level beings, there were still other monsters in this world that managed to get near the powers of constellations or transcenders. The peak of all types of monsters in the world. Guhohuhu. A dragon's roar, capable of freezing up the listener's body, resounded out. Shadows of the ruined cities seemed to fleet by, as the ancient dragon kings that had been forgotten under the lengthy period of time began waking up. Kawakuk. Constellations struck by the dragon's breaths screamed as they turned to ash. Hundreds of draconic shadows blanketed the sky. The constellations of the star stream freaked out as they were subjected to the ripples from the vast statuses. Every single one of them was a dragon king, equal to the power of a constellation. All these countless dragons had shown up here, hoping to be selected as the lone apocalypse dragon, tasked with destroying this world. Great Fable, final dragon of the Book of Revelation, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, final dragon of the Book of Revelation, has begun selecting the dragon of calamity. I looked up at that overwhelming spectacle and spoke. We have a dragon among us, don't we? Xin Yusung looked at me after hearing me speak. There was a dragon with thick metal armor covering its entire figure, sitting next to her. First grade dragon king, Chimera dragon. Thanks to Xin Yusung's diligent care, it had become strong enough not to get pushed around by any regular constellations. A dragon that was born in the demon world's paradise, loudly roared into the heavens above. TL, that's what it says in the Ra. Han Suyang watched it fly up into the sky and asked me a question. You really think that guy will become the king? I shook my head. Sure, the Chimera dragon possessed an unbelievable rate of growth, but it was still too early for the creature to become a viable candidate for the role of Apocalypse Dragon. Then, why are you so confid? We still have one more, right? What? Where? Han Suyang formed a rather dumb-looking expression. But then, her right hand began wiggling violently as if it was responding to something. Right in the next second, the empty sky split wide open, and the pitch-black darkness exploded out from within. Dozens of dragons nearby screamed pitifully and fell down. The heavens flickered as if the darkness had overtaken it, and black bolts of lightning crashed down to the earth. Through the gap of the abyss, something began revealing itself. It was a dragon, covered in elegant scales seemingly crafted out of pure obsidian. A status that other ancient dragons couldn't even hope to match, eyes gleaming like the reddest of rubies, every time its wings, seemingly carved out from the darkness itself, flapped, entrancing black flames blanketed the sky. I looked up at that lifeform possessing the beautiful, streamlined shape and spoke. Let's all pray that your sponsor emerges victorious. It was the existence closest to being the Apocalypse Dragon at this point in time. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, has incarnated into the scenario.